Your tether just went slack, and you're no longer touching the International Space Station. You are Mission Specialist Maya Torres, 400 kilometers above Earth, and 30 seconds ago you were tightening a bolt on a damaged coolant line. Now the station is drifting away from you at a speed that does not feel real, and the only sound in your helmet is your own breathing, ragged and much too loud. Somewhere behind that widening gap of black, your EVA partner Sofia is shouting something into her radio that you can barely process. Houston is already talking, calm and urgent at the same time, running through a checklist you trained on exactly once months ago and hoped you would never actually need. You have one chance to get yourself back. You have never been more aware in your entire life of exactly how much empty space surrounds a single human body. Your training told you this could happen. Nothing about your training told you what it would actually feel like. Pull back, but to understand how you ended up alone in that silence, you need to go back to 6 hours earlier and the alarm that started all of this. 6 hours earlier, you were asleep in your crew quarters when the station's alarm cuts through your sleep cycle, sharp and insistent. A micrometeorite, smaller than a grain of rice, but traveling faster than a rifle bullet, has punched through a radiator panel on the station's coolant system, and pressure in one loop is dropping in a way that cannot wait for the next scheduled spacewalk. Commander Reyes is already awake when you reach the module, headset on, talking quietly with Houston while data scrolls across 3 separate screens. He has flown 2 previous missions and has the particular calm of a man who has already lived through worse mornings than this one. Repair or replace the damaged line within 12 hours, he tells you, or we lose thermal control on an entire station segment. Electronics in that segment will begin overheating well before the 12 hours are actually up. He adds, in case anyone in the room was hoping for a more relaxed deadline than the one already on the table. You have done EVA training for exactly this kind of failure, submerged for hours in a pool the size of Small Lake back in Houston, practicing the same bolt patterns and cable splices until your hands could manage them half asleep. You have never actually had to do it for real, 400 kilometers above a planet that suddenly feels very far away. Your first instinct, absurdly, is to check the time back home, half a world and 400 kilometers removed from whatever ordinary morning is currently unfolding there without you. You dress quickly, pulling on the same worn flight suit you have worn for every emergency drill this rotation, and follow Commander Reyes toward the module where Sofia is already reviewing the damage assessment on a secondary screen, hair still messy from being woken as abruptly as you were. Nobody on the crew says the word dangerous out loud during that first briefing, though everybody in the room is clearly thinking it, the unspoken word taking up more space than anything actually said aloud. Before you go further, if being inside a story like this is genuinely what you're here for, subscribe to POV Chronicles right now. Every video on this channel puts you inside a real kind of moment, researched carefully and brought to life in cinematic detail. Now back to the story. You and Sofia Bianchi, the station's other EVA-qualified crew member this rotation, spend the next 3 hours suiting up in a process that feels less like getting dressed and more like being slowly sealed inside a small, extremely complicated spacecraft of your own. Every valve, every seal, every glove connection gets checked twice by someone other than the person wearing it. You breathe pure oxygen for 40 minutes before the walk even begins, purging nitrogen from your bloodstream to avoid decompression sickness in a near vacuum outside, a slow, deliberate process that gives you far too much time to think about everything that could go wrong once that hatch actually opens. Commander Reyes runs you both through the repair procedure one final time, tapping a diagram on his tablet with the same patience he has shown in every training session for the past 8 months. Cut here, he says. Splice here. Do not, under any circumstances, rush the tether checks, no matter how far behind schedule the coolant leak puts you. Sofia checks your suit seals personally, tugging each connection with more force than feels strictly necessary, and grins at you through her visor when you flinch. Better my hands catch it now than vacuum catches it later, she says, and you decide, not for the first time, that you are glad she is the one going out there with you. You cycle through the airlock together, and the outer hatch opens onto a view that no amount of training video ever properly prepares a person for. Earth fills half your visual field, close enough to feel touchable, moving beneath you at a speed your mind simply refuses to process as real. You clip your primary tether to the station's handrail system and begin translating hand over hand toward the damaged radiator panel. Sofia, close behind you, doing the same. Houston talks you through each handhold, voice calm and steady in your ear the entire way, calling out landmarks on the station's exterior structure like a patient tour guide who happens to also be monitoring your vital signs in real time. The damage is worse than the diagnostic suggested. A jagged puncture the size of a coin has torn clean through the panel. Coolant already frozen into a fine spray of crystals drifting slowly away from the hull, catching sunlight like a tiny, silent firework display. You radio the details back to Houston, hands already reaching for the tool tethered at your waist. Sofia, a European Space Agency astronaut on her second long-duration mission, keeps a small photograph of the Alps tucked inside her personal kit, and jokes floating beside you in the airlock that she half expects to see them from up here one clear pass over Europe, which she insists is not scientifically impossible, only extremely unlikely. Commander Reyes checks the mission clock one final time before sealing the inner hatch behind you both. "Com check," he says. Sofia confirms first, voice crisp and businesslike now that the joking is over. You confirm a half-second later, throat suddenly a little dry despite the pure oxygen you have been breathing for the better part of an hour. The outer hatch cycles open with a soft mechanical shudder you feel through your gloves more than hear. And then there's nothing between you and 400 kilometers of open sky, except a suit built by careful engineers and tested more times than you have fingers to count. You take one final look back through the airlock's small window before it seals fully behind you, catching a glimpse of Commander Reyes watching the exterior feed with an expression carefully arranged to look calmer than you suspect he actually feels. Your suit's cooling system hums quietly against your back as you work, a small, constant reminder of exactly how many separate systems currently stand between your body and the vacuum pressing in on every side. You begin the repair exactly as briefed, cutting away the damaged section of line, while Sofia holds a replacement segment steady beside you. Your gloves, thick and pressurized, make even simple tasks feel like working underwater in oven mitts, every motion slower and more deliberate than it would be on the ground. You work methodically, calling out each step to Houston as you complete it, a running commentary that has become second nature after months of training simulations. Cutting primary line now. Segment removed clean. Preparing replacement splice. A soft chime sounds in your helmet, a debris warning from the station's tracking radar. Something small has been flagged on a trajectory that will pass uncomfortably close to your current position within the next few minutes. Houston tells you to continue working, but stay alert, the kind of instruction that manages to be both reassuring and deeply unsettling at the same time. You glance instinctively toward the black beyond the station's structure, though you know perfectly well you would never actually see anything small enough to worry about until it was already far too late to matter. Sofia notices the glance and taps your shoulder once, a small, grounding gesture that says keep working better than any words could. You finish the splice on the new coolant segment and reach for the secondary clamp, twisting slightly to get better leverage against the panel. Something small and metallic drifts past your visor close enough to startle you, a stray washer neither of you dropped, tumbling silently off into the dark. You track it with your eyes for a half-second longer than you should, distracted by the strange, slow beauty of an object simply falling forever in a straight line. Sofia's voice crackles in your ear, tighter than before. "Maya, check your primary tether." You glance down toward your waist, and the words take a full second to actually register. The tether clip, rated and double-checked before you ever left the airlock, has somehow worked itself loose against the panel's torn edge during the repair. You are still holding the replacement coolant line in one glove hand. You're no longer physically connected to the International Space Station. Houston's voice remains steady throughout, reading out telemetry data at a pace that feels almost conversational, Though you know perfectly well an entire room of specialists on the ground is watching every single number scroll past in real time. Commander Reyes breaks in once, briefly, simply to confirm he can see you both clearly on the exterior camera feed. You allow yourself a small, private moment of satisfaction as the splice takes hold cleanly, pressure readings already beginning to stabilize on the diagnostic panel strapped to your forearm. It is, you think, the kind of quiet competence nobody back on Earth will ever fully see or properly understand, and somehow that makes it feel more satisfying rather than less. Somewhere below and slightly ahead of your position, the Terminator line, the slow-moving boundary between day and night, sweeps steadily across an ocean you cannot immediately identify, indifferent entirely to the small, urgent repair currently underway several hundred kilometers above it. A second, quieter chime follows the first, confirming the debris has passed at a safe distance, and you allow yourself the smallest possible exhale before returning your full attention to the clamp still not fully seated in your hand. The station begins to drift away from you with a slowness that feels almost gentle, which makes it considerably more terrifying rather than less. You have not been thrown. You have simply stopped moving with it, and orbital mechanics does not care how calmly that fact arrives. Your training takes over before panic fully can. Do not grab for anything. Do not thrash. Every uncontrolled movement only adds velocity you cannot easily undo, spinning you further from any handhold rather than closer to one. You force your gloved hand still and key your radio, voice tighter than you would like it to be. Houston, this is Torres. I have separated from the structure. The words feel absurd even as you say them, a sentence you rehearsed exactly once in a training simulator and never once believed you would actually need to speak for real. Mission Control's response comes back within seconds, a voice you do not recognize but trust immediately, walking you through the activation sequence for your safer unit. The small jetpack built into your suit for exactly this scenario, and, until this exact moment, a piece of equipment you genuinely hoped never to actually need. Sofia's voice cuts through again, steadier now, feeding you your tumble rate and the station's relative position from her own vantage point. She has not moved from her own handhold, you realize, because leaving it herself would only create a second untethered crew member instead of solving the problem of the first one. You reach for the hand controller at your chest, fingers clumsy inside thick gloves, and locate the small joystick by feel rather than sight, because you do not trust yourself to look away from the widening gap of black behind you. Earth continues turning beneath you regardless, vast and utterly indifferent to the very small, very urgent problem currently unfolding several hundred kilometers above its surface. You force yourself to picture the safer unit's control diagram exactly as it appeared in your final training session, translating the memorized image into the actual controller now sitting heavy and unfamiliar in your gloved palm. 2 clicks to arm the system. A third to confirm. You complete the sequence with hands that only shake slightly, which feels, under the circumstances, like a genuine personal victory. You think absurdly of Sofia's joke about the Alps less than an hour earlier, and wonder whether either of you will ever find it quite as funny again after today, assuming today ends the way you are currently doing everything in your power to make it end. Sofia's tether remains firmly clipped throughout, a small, deliberate detail Houston confirms twice over the radio, because losing a second crew member to the same failure is not a scenario anyone currently wants to test in real conditions. You pulse the thrusters in short, deliberate bursts exactly as trained, canceling your tumble one small correction at a time, rather than fighting it all at once. The station stops reseating. For one suspended moment, you are simply hanging motionless in space, Earth turning slowly beneath you, entirely unconnected to anything solid in the universe. The silence out here is unlike anything you have ever experienced. No wind, no hum of station equipment, nothing except your own breathing and the occasional soft chime of your suit's instruments. You allow yourself exactly 1 full second to feel the size of that silence before forcing your attention back to the controller in your hand. You angle the controller and fire a longer burst, and your body begins, agonizingly slowly, to close the gap back toward the station's hull. Sofia's voice counts down the distance in her headset, steady and clear, an anchor you hold onto as tightly as the controller itself. 50 meters. 40. You correct a slight drift to your left with a tiny counterburst, watching your trajectory line up with the station's structure the way Houston walks you through it, one comm sentence at a time. 30 meters. 20. The station fills more of your visual field with every passing second, details resolving from a distant shape into solar panels, handrails, the exact damage panel you were repairing minutes ago, oddly small now against the enormous curve of the planet behind it. Your fuel warning chimes softly. You have perhaps 30 seconds of thrust remaining, and you are still several meters from anything you can physically grab. You force your breathing to slow, the way every simulator instructor drilled into you, because panic burns fuel exactly as fast as thrusters do. You fire one final, precise burst, and your gloved hand closes around a handrail with a jolt that travels through your entire arm, hard enough to bruise, welcome enough that you do not care in the slightest. You do not let go. Sofia is there within seconds, clipping a spare tether directly to your suit before either of you says a single word about what just happened. You hang there together for a long moment, two suited figures against the entire curve of the Earth, saying nothing at all, because there is genuinely nothing adequate to say. Somewhere in the back of your mind, entirely unhelpfully, you register the sheer beauty of the moment, even as your training screams at you to focus only on the handrail growing steadily larger in your visor. Earth's curve glowing gold along one edge, where sunrise is currently happening for roughly 16 separate countries at once. Your heart rate, displayed on the small screen inside your visor, finally begins dropping back towards something resembling normal only once your boots find the station's stabilizing foot restraint, solid contact registering through your entire body like a held breath finally released. You do not fully trust your own legs to hold you upright once you are finally back inside the airlock and lean, without quite deciding to, against the nearest solid wall for several long seconds before attempting to move at all. You finish the repair together 20 minutes later, hands steadier than either of you expected, coolant pressure climbing back toward normal on Houston's readouts as you work. Nobody suggests aborting the EVA. There is a job still to finish, and finishing it turns out to be the fastest way back to feeling like yourself again. You cycle back through the airlock in silence, helmet's finally off, and Commander Reyes is waiting exactly where he said he would be, saying very little, though the way he grips your shoulder tells you everything his voice does not. The debris that caused all of it, engineers determined days later, was smaller than a coin, traveling faster than any bullet ever fired on Earth. You keep the torn scrap of radiator panel, retrieved during a later EVA, in your locker for the rest of the mission. If a story like this is what you come to POV Chronicles for, subscribe right now. There's another one just like it waiting whenever you're ready. Hit like if that moment watching the station drift away, utterly silent, hit you the way it hit us researching it. And drop a comment below. First, could you have kept calm enough to fly yourself back? Second, let us know where in the world you're watching this from.